So I want to start by telling you a story that sort of started out happening over the quarantine. A lot of the salons were mandated to stop working and to go home. And so I went home, and for the first time in my life, I was jobless. I spent a lot of time on Pinterest, which most women probably did during the quarantine. And I got all these bright ideas. My Pinterest board was full of things that we needed to do around our home. So I think in all, we probably got about 20 different projects finished. But one of my favorite projects were making a garden this year in our yard. And so I did all of my research. I looked up everything I needed to look up. I knew what to do as far as a raised bed went. My husband's super handy, so he helped me build this raised bed. And I looked up, how much fertilizer, how much soil, how much anything and everything that you needed to do to make this garden grow. And so I planted our garden, and as I was dropping the seeds in, every single one of them, I know this might sound like a little silly, but every one of them, I would just pray over them. And I'm like, Lord, I know that this seed means something to you, so I just want you to grow it, and I want you to make it bountiful. And so I prayed over this whole little garden, and it was a small one because I didn't want to start out too big. And we planted some zucchinis, some cucumbers, some onions, some tomatoes, and some peppers. And I would go down every day and I would check this garden, and I started to get really excited because the blooms started to show up, and I knew that something was working correctly. And if you're like me and you're on social media, you start noticing quickly how other people's things look a lot better than yours. I started seeing all of my friends post pictures and videos of having 47 tomatoes, and I legit had not one. And so I was getting a little weary, and I started researching again, what was I doing wrong? Did I put too much fertilizer? We put cow poop in our garden, so I was like, maybe we put too much poop. That would be a nitrogen issue. And so Brandon and I started talking about all the things that could be wrong. And one of the days that I went down to my garden, I noticed this teeny little cucumber. And so I went down, and I was excited because I finally had a fruit. No longer did I have a bloom, I had a fruit. And so over time, all of my stuff started growing. Now, it grew really slowly, and compared to everyone else's garden, I think in North Carolina, mine was like tiny little garden. And so I'm down there one day, and it's finally time to pick my cucumber. And that day's harvest, I got one cucumber, I got one tomato, and I got one pepper. And I was sitting there, and I was holding it in my hand, and I was like, Lord, I want to thank you for this really small harvest. It's a little puny, but I want to thank you for it, because had you not given me the ability, I wouldn't have been able to grow this particular fruit. And I stopped for a moment, and God said to me, slow. That's how I'm going to grow you this season, is slow. You tend to always want things really fast. You tend to always want things really easily. And I'm going to grow you slow this season. And so I went upstairs, and a lot of times when the Lord speaks to me, I write that down in a prayer journal. And so I wrote down exactly what he said to me, and in all caps, I wrote the word slow. And I started to meditate on those words exactly, and I realized that what God had been preparing me for is 2020's kind of been a bummer, honestly. There's not a ton of great things that have come out of 2020. We're in the midst of quarantine. We're in the midst of a crazy sickness that we don't even know a lot of the answers to. And I've had to pull back from work. I made the decision to homeschool my children this year. And I don't know if you guys know, I'm a hairstylist, not a teacher. And so that was a really difficult decision for me. And everything I seem to be doing this year, I almost feel as if I'm running into a brick wall. And I'm praying through that brick wall, and God's putting a door there. But every single thing I'm doing this year is hard for me. My last season was a really quick one and a really easy one. It seemed like every time I opened the Bible, the words just jumped out to me, and that God just spoke to me over and over and over. And I learned so much knowledge last season. And so I got really comfortable in that season of life. And we all know that there are good seasons and bad seasons. And usually when you come out of an easy one, you're going to walk into a hard one. I knew that time was going to come to an end where it was going to be a harder season, and I tried to not think about it because I didn't want to get too far ahead in my own thoughts. But here I am in 2020 in a really difficult season. Things are just hard for me. I'm a perfectionist. I like things to look good from the outside. I like them to be easy from the inside. I like to perfect everything I do. Everything I do. It's my makeup. That's how my personality is. And I'm sitting here and I'm stuck in a really hard season. And I was telling a friend this morning, sometimes it's easier, honestly, to live on the backside of revelation. And what I mean by that is Mike says a lot, just because you become a Christian doesn't mean things get easier. On this side of revelation, you realize who God is. You know that He's there for you. You know that He's going to walk you through it. But on this side of revelation, sometimes you can just have a pity party. And you can say, God, I don't see you. I don't know where you are. And sometimes I think it's easier to sit on that side of revelation because we don't have to work through our thoughts. We can just blame God, kind of cross our arms and say, I'm staying here for a season. I just don't like it, and I'm staying here. One of the choices that I've made in this season is that I'm going to be optimistic about it. I could choose to sit on this side and say, God, why me? Why did you pull my job from me? Why did you pull school from these children? Why did you pull me back from a lot of the ministry areas that I was involved in? Why have you pulled me back in a corner? But instead of that, I know that God's growing me. I know that perfect growth comes slowly. I know that God is going to walk beside of me. I know that He's never going to leave me. I know that when I'm weary and I'm heavy laden, He will give me rest. I know that He will never forsake me. I know all of those promises, so I have to keep reminding myself, God is in control. He's growing me in this season, and I need to remember to ask Him, what is it that you're growing in me? One of those things is lack of control. I don't like lack of control, and that's one of those things that He's showing me. Yes, you're not in control right now, but I am, and I know what's going to come out on the other side, and that you just have to trust me. So I just want to encourage you today, if you're stuck in 2020 with the mindset of, God, where are you? God, when are you going to come through for me? I'm not good at this. I'm not the best at this. If you're stuck in that mindset, I want to challenge you to really ask the Lord, what is it that you're trying to grow in me this season? Because He's trying to do something in all of us, and we can either sit on this side of revelation, cross our arms and say, I'm not moving, or we can sit on this side of revelation and we can say, God, I know that you're in control and you're going to pull me through. So help me learn in this situation so that we can make this quicker and I don't have to stay here so long. Because the quicker we learn and the quicker we move forward, the quicker we're out of Egypt. And so I just want to encourage you guys, if you're struggling with that today, ask the Lord, what is it in me that you're trying to get out? Is it my pride? Is it my comfortable an ability to be comfortable? Is it that you need me to be less negative? Whatever the thing is that God's trying to bring you out of, I just want to encourage you today that He will never leave you. He'll never forsake you. He'll always walk beside you. And we're going to come outside of this year of 2020, we're going to come on the outside of that, and we're going to look back in hindsight and we're going to say, God, you really knew what you were doing in that season, and I'm thankful and I'm blessed for that.